Hey guys, I'm back, and we're gonna go ahead and call this part two. Um, Welcome back again to A Journey to Italy. And as you may recall, we were going over the events um, that led up to me having my son, Warrior. Right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, as I mentioned, they told me that I was about to deliver this baby and that there was nothing that they could do. The nurse had to explain that to the father because I was not capable of telling him what they just told me. I was still trying to process it myself. Um, After they told him, we were both sitting in this room full of confusion, wondering what happened, what went wrong, where did we go wrong, why. That's a question till this day. I'm wondering why. Um, so as we're sitting there, they're hooking me up to all the monitors. They are running tests. Then there's this nurse who comes in and asks me, am I in any pain? I mentioned to her that I was in pain. And so she says, okay, would you like some fentanyl? And I remember sitting there saying, no. Why would she offer me fentanyl? And she says, do you not want it because of what you've heard on the streets? I said, that is exactly correct. Why do I want fentanyl? She says, well, it's different in the hospitals. We can monitor it here. It's not like what you get on the streets. I said, okay, sure. With anything to ease the pain. As some of you may know, when you're dealing with labor pain, it's painful. But as some of you may know also, who have children, no one offers fentanyl for pain. You get an epidural, you get ibuprofen, you get Tylenol, you get narcotics, you don't get fentanyl. It was after all of this when I realized they gave me that to change my state of mind. Because they knew what was about to happen. I still wasn't clear what was about to happen. So they put me on drip fentanyl. And for those who don't know, that's where you can push a button every 10 minutes and give yourself a dose of medicine. So I was on drip fentanyl. And after a while, you're high. After a while, you don't even know why you keep pushing this button. You just know you keep pushing this button. Even when you're just in a little pain, you know the medicine's coming, let me push this button. Those of you who've had kids, you know that when you have an epidural, it's the same way. And you push the button and you get a little extra dose to ease the contractions, ease the pain. So while I was on fentanyl, as I'm laying there uncomfortable, the nurses, they keep coming in, they keep checking on me, seeing how things are going. I feel wet now. I tell the nurse something's not right. I'm wet. I feel wet. She looks, okay, calm down. It's okay. Your water broke. Now I'm getting anxious. No, no. I'm looking at the father. No, like this can't happen. It can't. It can't happen. They're trying to keep me calm. More fentanyl. Then I say, I feel something between my legs. She says, okay, I'll check. And mind you guys, this nurse never left the room because she knew, this was happening faster than I thought it was happening. She never left the room. So she said, let me see. And she looked and she paged the doctor and said she's delivering. And before the doctor could even come into the room, the baby was already being delivered. I was under so much medication that I didn't even know that the doctor wasn't in the room to deliver this baby, my baby. It wasn't until after a lot of this, when the father told me, the doctor didn't deliver that baby. He didn't deliver the baby. She didn't deliver the baby. I said, well, who delivered the baby? Some nurse, some random nurse. The nurse delivered the baby. And then 5 minutes later, the doctor comes in from doing a cesarean on another woman. And she delivered the placenta. And during this process, I remember they kept asking me, do you want to see your baby? And I said, no. No, I don't want to see. And I didn't know the gender. They told me you had a little boy. Do you want to see him? And I said, no. So they said, okay, and the doctor said, take him away. And so they took him and they delivered the placenta, and now things shifted gears very quickly. After they delivered the placenta, I'm bleeding out now. And now the doctor says we have to rush you to the OR. And I said no. One thing about me, I don't like surgeries. I don't like being put to sleep. I don't like any of those things, so I said no. And so my mom was on FaceTime, and my mom said, you have to let them take you. They have to stop the bleeding. They have to stop it. And I just remember I kept saying, no, I don't want to go. She said, they have to stop the bleeding. So they took me. And as some of you may know or may not, when you're going into surgery, nobody's there with you. You're all by yourself. And it could be very scary. So they ended up taking me. And I remember going into the OR, And I thought, when what they show us on TV and movies, I thought it was staged. I thought it's just for TV. This was my first time ever going into an OR under serious circumstances. When I tell you there were so many nurses and doctors in that room, it was unbelievable. I was wondering, why are all these people in this room? It looked like a TV show. As soon as they pushed me in, there was nurses and doctors everywhere. There were lights everywhere. And I was terrified. And I remember the doctor saying, put her to sleep. And I told them no. And she looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I don't want to go to sleep. I said, you've already given me an epidural. I'll be okay. Do what you have to do. But I don't want to go to sleep. There was a nurse there who stood by my side. And she said, let me know if you're in any pain. And I said, no, because then you'll put me to sleep. She said, we won't put you to sleep, I promise. But we'll give you something for the pain. I said, okay. They ended up having to do a procedure called a hysteroscopy. During this procedure, they're trying to stop you from bleeding out. They couldn't stop me from bleeding out. I had every blood supply in the hospital. If anybody needed that blood type, they would have been out of luck. She had all of it. And I was watching them squeeze the blood in me, throwing the packages just as fast as she was trying to stop the bleeding. But it wasn't working. I watched this doctor sitting on my bed. She wasn't standing in front of the bed. Her knees were on the bed inside me, trying to stop this bleeding. And nothing was working. I kept hearing her say, I can't stop the bleeding. They gave me every medicine that you can think of to stop bleeding. Before I knew it, I was getting shots, not only in my arms. I was getting medicine, not only in the IVs. I was getting shots in my legs of all kind of medicine to stop bleeding, to clot the blood. Nothing wasn't working. I started to feel weak. I started to feel like I wasn't okay. I started thinking about the last words I told my son, I'll be right back. I knew I wasn't okay. I asked the nurse, am I okay? She said, yeah, you're fine. You're doing fine. You're okay. But I knew I wasn't okay. You can feel it. You know your body. So I started to pray. And I started to ask God to intervene. Because the doctor said she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to stop the bleeding. So I started talking to God. And I asked God if he would step in and intercede. And he did. When I was done praying, that doctor said, I stopped the bleeding. I knew that was nothing but God. And she stopped the bleeding. She finished up the procedure and took me into recovery. When I went into recovery, I was a little out of it, a lot of medication, but I was alive. Took me a second to recognize the Father. I was a little out of it, but I finally came to. And the nurse came back and asked me, would you like to see your son? I said, no. My mom says, you want to see him? I said, no, I don't. Why do I want to see him? My mom said, you don't want to regret not seeing him. You want to see him. I asked the nurse, is he alive? She said no. I said, then why do I want to see him? My mom says, you want to see him. You don't want to live with that, knowing that you didn't see him. So I said, fine. I'll see him. And when they brought this little boy to me, my mind and my heart was in a different place. I wasn't there anymore. At that moment, there wouldn't have been nothing nobody could tell me saying that that baby wasn't alive. Because when I had him, he was alive. He was just sleeping. He was beautiful. He just looked peaceful. He just looked like he was sleeping. And so I held on to him as long as I could. And when I calculated the hours, it was about 17 hours that I kept my son, and I held him. And they tried to preserve the body, and they put ice underneath in the crib that he's laying in. But the more you hold the child, the warmer the child gets, and they're not preserved. And I continued to hold him. And so after so long, he started to change, right? He started to look different. His legs and his feet, they started to bruise, and he just started to change. And so I said, I'm gonna go ahead and give him to the nurses. They can take him now. And here's where I'm dealing with a situation with the hospitals now, is because when I told the nurse that she could take him, from my understanding, they're supposed to take him out in the bed that they brought him in. But she didn't. She says, okay, I'll be right back. And when she came back, she came with a box. And she took my son and put him in that box, and closed the box and walked out with him. And I lost it. And another nurse came and gave me more fentanyl. And I just wasn't okay. It didn't matter how much drugs they gave me. It didn't matter what you tried to do to me. That's a pain that will never go away. You'll never forget that. And all I wanted was my son back. I wanted him back. I wanted to take him home. I wanted him back. And I kept telling the father, I want my son. I want him. And apparently they were asking, what did we want to do? Did we want to bury him, or did we want to cremate him? I wasn't paying attention to that. So all I told them was, I want to take him home. I want to take my son home. That's what I want. I want to take him home. And so the father was under the impression, okay, she wants to take him home, so let's cremate him. Now, I don't blame the father. he just did what he thought, I wanted. Me personally, I don't believe in cremation. Do I regret it? I don't know. I don't really believe in it. But, I do have him in the home with me. He is cremated. My bishop, who is a phenomenal person, my bishop and first lady, they purchased a beautiful urn for him to go in, and he is in the home. And I'm grateful for that. He's not in the home how I would want him to be, but he is here with me. But he did end up getting cremated, and that was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life. Sometimes you lose relatives, sometimes you lose friends, and it hurts. But usually with time, you can move on. But I've noticed when you lose a child, it doesn't matter how old that child is. It doesn't matter how much time goes by. That hurt is still there. You still feel that pain. You still cry. You still have your days where you're not okay, but, I get my strength from God. People ask me all the time, how do you deal with this? But see, the thing is, I'm still dealing with it. It's not something I've dealt with and moved on. It's something I constantly deal with every day. Every day I wake up, I'm asking God for strength. I'm asking God, to help me through the day. Because I still ask why. I still sit here sometimes and wonder, why? What happened? What did I do wrong? What went wrong? Why couldn't Warrior have been here? But I try not to worry myself too much about why. And I've learned to be grateful for what I have now. I can't continue to beat myself up about why, because unfortunately it has happened. It's been done. My son was born November 23rd of 2021, and I'm still dealing with it. It's not something that just goes away. I've heard so many people tell me to get over it. Have another one. You'll be fine. Just get over it. It happens. And those people, you have to cut out of your life, because that's nothing but negativity. And that was something I didn't need in my life at that moment. I didn't need someone who's never been through that to tell me that get over it. It's fine. An issue I have, with doctors, and why I say, I don't confide in them, is because there was a doctor who told me. This happens all the time. I see it all the time. You can have another one. That broke my heart. For a doctor I was sitting there like, what? I didn't come here for you to tell me that I'm okay. Just have another one. I came here because after my procedure in the OR, I was still in pain. I was still going through. And I came to her because she did the procedure, and I wanted her to see, was everything okay? And everything wasn't okay. Fast forward, after all of that, I was still in so much pain, physically, as well as mentally. But physically, I was in pain. And something was wrong. Something wasn't right. I started experiencing symptoms where I wasn't using the restroom at all. It didn't matter how much liquids I drank, I wasn't peeing. I was in a lot of pain, and then I started experiencing a horrible odor. I had my son in November. I was contacting doctors from November to January, explaining my symptoms and hoping someone would listen to me. But everyone told me that I was having phantom pregnancy thoughts, that I was, crazy, that I was thinking that I was still pregnant, I was going through, I wasn't in my right mind, all of these things. So I'm not crazy. I understand what happened. I'm not crazy, but something's wrong, and no one's listening to me. Finally, there was a doctor who said, let's check it out, because that's the same thing I've been saying for the past 2 months. It doesn't hurt to check. And she finally checked it out and couldn't believe what she seen. And from that procedure that I had in November, they usually, after they're done with the procedure, they pack you with a lot of packing, like gauze, to help stop the bleeding. Before you leave, they're supposed to remove all of that to make sure you're not still bleeding, everything's okay, blah, blah, blah. Well, the lady who came in, the nurse who came in to remove it, didn't do her job the way she was supposed to. So she never looked there. She just put her hand there and pulled some packing out, and her words were, I think I got it all. And I sat there and was like, what do you mean you think you got it all? I later on found out that when you go through a procedure like that, they have someone in the room that documents all utensils that are used, all materials that are used, what's going inside of you, what's coming out of you. They document those things. So when the packing was being removed, that was something that was supposed to have been documented. Well, it wasn't. So she removed what she thought was everything. And later on, I was dealing with all of this still inside of me, brewing, pretty much. I could have died, but thank God I'm still alive. But, I could have been sepsis. I could have died. I could have not made it. And my family would have been wondering what happened. She was healthy. She was fine. What happened to her? Not knowing that there was a doctor who left all this packing inside of me, soaking in blood and all of these things. And, the infection could have been way worse through my blood and everything. But thank God, we took care of all of that, and I'm still here. But when I tell you I don't confide in no doctor, they're not perfect. And some of them are careless. And I know some people, there's a controversy. Well, it's because you're black. Well, it's because, this one was white. So that's why, it didn't happen to her. Or you're black. And, I don't really know if those things are true or not. I don't know. I like to think they're not. But, I know we live in a world where things still exist. But I'm still, like I said, dealing with the hospitals and the doctors over these situations that have occurred because they were not okay. So that is the story of Warrior. That is how Warrior has gotten here. That's what happened. He was born way too early. They say they don't take any extra measures when they're before 24 weeks. And so they didn't try no resuscitation methods or anything. They said his lungs or anything, it's not developed, it's not strong. We're not, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry. So like I said, that's something I still deal with. But I'm thankful that I'm alive, because that event was a lot. It took a lot. And like I mentioned to you guys before, that is a significant part to my journey to Italy. And so this is why I'm sharing it with you all. It's definitely a lot to share. It's not an easy task, but I know that there are other women out there that deals with this as well, or who has dealt with it, or who may in the future, unfortunately, deals with it. And so I just want to put my story out there to know that I'm not alone. You're not alone. There's a lot of us women who go through this, and it's not talked about. And we don't feel supported. And, you know, I've made up in my mind that, you know, I'm not going to let the world and others dictate, you know, how I should feel about the grief of my son. I will grieve however I choose to grieve, and I will deal with it how I want to deal with it, and I will deal with it in my own timing. This is not something that anybody can rush you to deal with, can rush you to get over, or, you know, tell you get over it. It happened 2 years ago. That doesn't matter, because something about when you carry a child and you deliver that child, there's a bond there that could never be replaced. Nobody can be replaced, and especially men. You know, there's some men out there that don't have they don't have any grace on their partners. And, you know, I would like to tell you from a personal experience, have a little grace with your partner, because you don't know what it's like to bear a child. You don't know what it's like to carry a child. You don't know the hardships and the pain and the emotions that a woman, a mother, has to go through to bring that child into this world, whether they make it or not. You have no idea what that's like, and you don't understand the pain that we're left with even when that child is gone. You don't understand it, because you didn't have to carry that child. That's a different bond. It's a different bond, you know, that a mother shares with their child versus a father. Fathers, unfortunately, you guys don't share that bond. I'm sorry to, you know, burst that bubble of yours, but you don't share that bond. When you carry a child, that's a bond that you and that child have. When that child is born, then the father creates a bond with that child. But a mother and a child, that's a bond that can't be broken. It's something that you always have. God created it that way. So that's my story for you all of Warrior. And like I said, he was a part of my journey to Italy, so I wanted to share it with you all. The next time I talk with you, we will talk about what happens after Warrior. We'll talk about, you know, where is my mental now after Warrior? You know, how are things going now? You know, what's the update now? Now we are in the year of 2023. What has transpired in 2 years since Warrior? And that's what we will be talking about. soon. I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for your support. I thank you for your encouraging words. And once again, if you have not liked, shared, subscribed to this channel, please do so. It's very informative. It could be sad, but trust me, this journey has some ups, but it definitely has some downs. And I would love to share this journey with you all. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.